So, Luna 5 is on the horizon. As much as I want to make an analysis on the livestream, I just don't see a reason to make a long video about it because, well, the update is as straightforward as it can get. It's a Mondstadt filler content. However, despite being a filler, there are interesting things that we might learn more in that update, which are the Hexen Circle, the Bloodstained Knights, and most importantly, Varka. We also have a small glimpse of how fate works, but that's a topic for a different video. The reason I say that is because of Varka's animated short titled Another Prologue, where it's basically a story of how Mondstadt's story is supposed to go. Basically, the Traveler never appeared, Mondstadt was saved by Varka, there's no expedition, and Valin got sealed by Fenty because he couldn't be purified. Nicole goes as far to say that Varka could have easily been a hero. So, what made the story change? Well, again, we can talk about that in another day, but in today's video, we'll explore who Varka is, his timeline, his connection with Boreas and Bloodstained Knight, and there might be some interesting connection with the first angel, Koitar. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Neko Gitsune and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. Now that Varka is out, it's not surprising if a lot of people want to pull for the man. I mean, look at him. Huge muscles, manly face. Previous men could never, except for Roland. I love this man to death. Of course, for one to get a Varka, one must surrender their possession to the Varka. And that's why Lootbar is here to help you with that. Lootbar has been a long-time partner of this channel now, and that's because I use it myself. They provide cheaper crystals compared to in-game prices, supports consoles, supports melee Astro Wonderland, and they have packages that guarantee you to get characters you want. All you need is to enter your UID, no personal information required, and your items will arrive quickly. Over 36,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Lootbar, and their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Aside from Genshin Impact, other popular games are included in Lootbar as well, including the newly added Arknight's Anfield. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all of the discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. The story of Varka goes all the way before the expedition was a thing, which is said to have been half a year before the Traveler visited Mondstadt. If we add with how long the game has run, his expedition has been running for around 5.5 years. According to the Hexen Circle, Varka was destined to be Mondstadt's hero, with him leading the Knights of Favonius and proving the people of Mondstadt how capable the Knights are. Unfortunately, Varka is unable to free the Valin from his abyssal corruption, causing Barbados to seal the Valin once again, just like how Zhongli sealed Ashtaha. Now, whether this was before or after the Cataclysm, the twins' arrival caused disturbance in fate, meaning that whole story ended up never happening. This is more of a speculation on my part, but judging from what Alice said in the animated short, it's possible that the twins' arrival is the reason why Mondstadt's prologue is vastly different. After all, the name of Luna 5 and 1.0 update is very identical. The difference is the additional word of Homeward and he, referring to Varka and the expedition that finally ended. Never mind, the most recent anecdote reveals that the expedition hasn't ended yet. So now that the Traveler caused disturbance in fate, what ended up happening? Well, this is how it goes. Varka was the first person who took part in the Hexen Circle's trials, the same trial that the Traveler and Albedo faced during Paralogism Arc Conquest. He passed the trials, and his request was to see what Barbalot's Cry class would reveal to him. What he saw was great devastation would soon come to Mondstadt, and it came all the way from Notcry. So this is interesting because this Wild Hunt invasion doesn't seem to refer to Revier at all, but rather referring to someone else. Now don't get me wrong, we already knew that the Wild Hunt were the remains of Revier's body when he jumped into Nibelung's prison and got his body torn into pieces, thus creating the Wild Hunt. However, there are certain Wild Hunt monsters that are not controlled by Revier, being the ones in Kipumaki Cliff are controlled by Rotwang, or some of you might know him as the Professor, or his real name as Rothfangi from the Night of the Sky's Unveiling artifact set. Now, I wrote this a few days before Varka's anecdote and trailer came out, and we are revealed that the new Wild Hunt leader is Roland, the Bloodstained Knight. Initially, I wanted to add that as a theory, but it seems that question is answered rather quickly. So yeah. Anyways, we can talk about Roland in a bit, and we can talk about Rotrang in another day because he is more connected towards Belitzar and the Saritsa. Saying all of that, Varka started his expedition, and judging from how his expedition was implied to not have a clear destination prior to Song of Vulcan Moon, it's heavily implied that Varka's expedition started without any intel, and Barbeloth didn't seem to tell him what to do either. During this time, the tripartite conference already concluded, with Varka going on an expedition to save Mondstadt from the upcoming Wild Hunt invasion, the Hex Circle helping Mondstadt in their time of need, and Barbados being, well, Barbados. Obviously, that is one of his goals, but we are revealed in the special program that there's more to what meets the eye. Believe me, based on what we know so far, the goal of his expedition is very unclear. We have no idea what it's all about, and I doubt it's only to save Mondstadt, because if he wants to do that, he could have just made preparations from Mondstadt and built strong defenses for the incoming doom, rather than go on and on wandering around Tevat. However, we do have some interesting hints about it, and if you read some of the NPCs near Lake Amsvarnir, you might get a pretty decent idea where it all goes to. We'll talk about that later. At one point of time, unclear whether this was before or during his expedition, Varka met Mavuika at the Stadium of Sacred Flame. They were supposed to have a meeting, but the two ended up trading drinks instead. Strangely enough, Barbeloth also has a line prior to Varka's talking about Mavuika's deeds when she broke the False Sky during the 5.1 Archon Quest. In fact, it's interesting when you read Mavuika's introduction because she was introduced by people from Mondstadt instead of people of Natlan. It could mean that Varka's arrival in Natlan was related to Notcry or Marijivari, which I believe will play out sometime during Song of Vulcan Moon because of the Bakunawa. Varka's trailer also came out before I wrote this video, and it seems that it was related to the Abyss after all. That said, I do believe this meeting happened before his encounter with Capitano. At that time, it was said that the expedition were encountering some problems but were then helped by Capitano's troops to recover. Capitano was also ordered by the Saritsa to head to Natlan at that time, and he told Varka about the Abyssal activities that are happening at the north, neither referring to the Abyss Order or the Wild Hunt. Speaking of Natlan, it was also during our journey in that nation that Varka's expedition found the lead that made them travel to Notcry. Let's go. He works together with Nefer to gather more intel and find some Wild Hunt disturbance near Lake Amsvarnir, which from what I can tell, doesn't seem to be related with Revier or Rotfungi at all, but might be related to the Tover because he was the one who resurrected Revier. However, it could imply Roland as well since the whole thing happened near the lake, but we'll talk about this later. The expedition settled there and created the Vivonius Keep. At first it was only for a temporary base, but it was later revealed by the NPCs that it will become a permanent branch of the Knights of Vivonius to gather more intel from Notcry to Mondstadt. The rest of the story is what we experienced during the Archon Quest, which I'ma be real with you all, Varka's involvement in the quest is kinda little and off-screened a lot, but regardless, it is worth noting that Varka's expedition coming to Notcry is indeed for the moon, or in this case, his home that is literally translated as the Moon City. Now this is where we enter the theory section. As always, videos like this take a lot of effort to make, and I want to let you guys know that I am currently aiming to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So, if you can help me out by liking and subscribing, you're helping this channel a lot more than you might have thought. With that said, let's continue. So Varka is the Knight of Boreas, and his name is a title given by a wolf god by the name of course, Boreas. Believe it or not, this particular god is a normal wolf at first. However, it soon became a god thanks to an angel that was spoken in the Drunkard's Tale and Ethelite's Spindalute. We are then further revealed in the Lake Amsvarnir's World Quest that this angel is none other than the first angel Koitak herself. So the angels were cursed into a silly, but we never really know what happened to Koitak. All we know is that she was punished by the heavenly principles, and her body was then contained within the royal court of Silis that was created by Seudar Voinen, or at least heavily implied to be Södervoinen. The people from the wiki did not quote this to him either, and I also find this line a little bit ambiguous since it can be either the Heavenly Principles or Södervoinen. Regardless, Boreas got his powers from her. He was at first a normal wild wolf and he was named that way by Koitar, which meant North Winds. As random as it is, the name's origin actually came from the name Hyperborea, taking the name of Borea. The name's similarity is also the one that made Koitar remember everything and recovered her memory loss, causing her to leave the royal court of Sealy, likely returning to the now destroyed Hyperborea. However, we can talk about this another day. The point is, Boreas got his powers from her as she unintentionally blessed him, and his reasoning to go to Mondstadt is to save the people of Old Mondstadt from the Caribbean. Whether there's another reason why Boreas wanted to go to Mondstadt, we have no idea either, so it's probably going to be revealed in Varka's story quest. The reason I brought Amsvarnir is literally because of Boreas. Varka tasked the Knights of Favonius to investigate the lake, as it has connection to the Sage God, but I also believe it might be related to the Wild Hunt. For a brief reminder, we were supposed to meet Varka during Luna 1 Archon quest, but he soon left for Amsvarnir because of Wild Hunt activities that were spotted there. Now here's the thing, because there's two possibilities that might be the case here. Either it's the Tory because, as we learn in the Archon quest, he was the one who revived Revir somehow, or it's Roland, the Bloodstained Knight. Personally, I don't think Revir plays a part in this because the revival doesn't seem to be quote-unquote recent, but might be a bit longer than that as Flynn's already encountered him prior to our arrival in Outcry, while Varka's investigation to Amsvarnir is very recent. The Wild Hunt signal that happened in Amsvarnir is said to have been a distraction according to Varka, and it is said that Revir did not work alone, or so it should be. In this update, we are introduced to Roland, who is said to be the Bloodstained Knight, and yes, it is the same knight from the Bloodstained Chivalry artifact set, and also the wielder of the BP weapon called the Black Sword. You might wonder why he is even related to the Knight of Boreas. Well, that's because his master is actually one of them named Rostam, Signora's lover. Roland used to be a white knight, but he was so obsessed with justice that he would slay anything that he deemed injustice by any means necessary. If you explore the area near Amsvarnir, you might encounter a quest called the Wolf's Call, where we encounter a certain pack of wolf spirits. It actually records everything that happened with the Bloodstained Knights and his group. At first, his expedition started in Atlan, but then he continued on to Notcry and is implied to have stayed there even longer because the injustice in there was too much for him to let it be. The Lightkeepers were helping Roland's group at that time and they fought together, but it is implied that Roland never accepted the proposal of joining the Lightkeepers either. In fact, Roland finds Notcry so impure that the purge is not limited to non-monsters either. It is implied that bandits were killed under his hand, which could imply a lot of the treasure hoarders were killed by him, which... bruh. At some point of time, he slaughtered a lot of monsters and humans that his white armor, body, face, and sword are completely stained in black as a result of blood covering his garments. People were understandably horrified by the sight of Roland that he decided to end his life by exploring Khaenri'ah and die on the battlefield against monsters. Before leaving, however, he entrusted the souls of his men that died during the expedition to Boreas, and it is implied that the wolf spirit near the interactable sword knows Roland personally. However, instead of dying, Roland found out that the monsters that he fought in Khaenri'ah are not ordinary monsters. Instead, they are the people of Khaenri'ah that were wrongfully cursed by the Heavenly Principles and now pledge himself to the Abyss as he finds this as an ultimate injustice. Now, I have a lot of things to say about this now that we got a lot of lore ever since 1.0, so the context behind his words contradicts a lot of things. First of all, there are two curses in Khaenri'ah, the curse of immortality and the curse of wilderness. The Khaenri'ans were cursed by immortality if they're pure-blooded, while the other is if they're half-blooded or not a native Khaenri'an. The curse of immortality was personally placed by Renova, but the curse of wilderness was already there prior to the Cataclysm, as implied in Perrin Harry and the Night of the Sky's Unveiling artifact set. During the Cataclysm, it is implied that both curses immediately take effect, but Renova never said to have placed the curse of wilderness Wilderness, which could mean two things. The Curse of Wilderness was triggered by someone else and cursed everyone regardless of them living Kyria or not, or two, it's a different type of curse. I had this conversation with a friend of mine on Discord, and both of us speculate that there might be more curses that the Heavenly Principles cast on the Kyrians. The keyword is interesting here. Wrongfully cursed, which is such an ironic thing to say from someone that is obsessed with justice but is a serial killer. People often call me the Heavenly Principles' hater, and I don't mind that. However, what people don't get is that I can acknowledge what the Heavenly Principles did always has a reason and for the greater good, even though I personally don't like the method. The Kyrians were not innocent, or at least as implied by Capitano and Outcry's Archon quest, the people of Crimson Moon Dynasty, Ermin, and the Five Sinners are not innocent. The Abyss is always destructive towards Teyvat, so for the Kyrians to be punished and cursed is not quote-unquote wrong. This is something that even Capitano acknowledges, as he can't point any fingers on who is right or wrong in this matter. However, you have to remember that the actions of the Heavenly Principles were said to have disappointed the Seven Archons, especially the Tsaritsa, and it is implied that even Asmodee switched sides because of this. The Archons should already know about the Curse of Wilderness, so if wrongfully cursed is indeed a different type of curse that we have yet to know of, then it's possible the Heavenly Principles' action at that time was turning everyone into monsters. This reminds me of the Ainsleif as well, because he was said to have slowly turned into a monster as per Caverna of Good and Evil World Quest, but stopped because of the ring that Featherfall gave him. Now it's worth noting that Roland was never implied to join the Abyss Order. Part of the Abyss is definitely the case, but not everyone from or affiliated with the Abyss are part of the Abyss Order. The Wild's Hunt is also not part of the Abyss Order as implied in the Archon Quest and Ilua's World Quest, and Roland's case could be the same as that. However, there is also another possibility. If he is indeed part of the Abyss Order, then those who he talked to on the Bloodstained Chivalry artifact set are the Kyrians from that organization. Since a lot of the Abyss Order members are Kyrians with the exception of Enjo, then it's possible that Roland joined the Abyss Order to serve justice for them by rebelling against the Heavenly Principles. Again, Roland's morals are extremely questionable because why? Roland fought in Outcry to purge the Abyss because he found its evil and injustice. So joining the Abyss to rebel against the Heavenly Principles counts as justice? I don't know. Logic is not logicking here. At the same time, however, I think this is still consistent with how the Abyss works. The Abyss basically whispers sweet promises that will end up destroying you, and the Abyss is destructive to begin with. It already existed outside of Teyvat, and we saw this happen with Revere in the Archon Quest already, where the Abyss whispered to him sweet delights of giving up and embracing the Abyss for more power. It goes the same with Rotwang, who embraced the Abyss for his obsession to tour the false sky, and if the Abyss promised Roland for the ultimate justice, then he certainly fell for that trap. As we already learned before, Roland is a disciple of the previous Knight of Boreas, that being Rostam. For one to become a Knight of Boreas, one has to be acknowledged by Boreas himself. So far, there's 4 Knights of Boreas already, that being the Unnamed Knight who is the original wielder of the Wolf's Gravestone, Ravenwood as introduced in Varka's anecdote, Rostam, who was at first introduced as Wolf Pup but then revealed to also be the Knight of Boreas, and finally Varka, who is the 4th and most recent Knight of Boreas. However, something is interesting about Varka's case, because if you turn on subtitle on Varka's trailer, Kapitan refers to Varka as the Knight of quote-unquote Boreas. It's as if Varka is not necessarily a full-on Knight of Boreas per se, or at the very least, half of proved by Boreas. It is implied in the trailer that there are 2 Boreas. Well, not necessarily 2 Boreas, but more so half of his soul. One is in Outcry while the other is in Mondstadt. Judging from what Roland wrote during the Wolf's Call World Quest, it seems there is a part of Boreas that he might have brought during his expedition, as it is implied there are wolf packs that followed him, which makes sense when you think about it, because it is implied multiple times whether in that quest, the special program, or even the trailer that there is a part of Boreas inside of a sword. That Boreas seems to be the black wolf that is already shown in the trailer, where it is already corrupted by the abyss, and I would assume that Roland might be a knight of Boreas as well that is acknowledged by this dark Boreas. I would assume that this Boreas is also corrupted by the abyss, as Mondstadt Boreas realizes that half of his soul is still in Notcry, since his powers came from Koitak, who is the first angel and worked together with the three moon goddesses as implied by how the Hyperboreans worshipped them. It's possible that his powers are, at the end of the day, still related to the moons as well. After all, his chapter is released during the Song of Welkin Moon, and the wolves are implied to be the children of the moon, as a lot of them still reside within Notcry. With Roland taking leadership in the Wild Hunt, it's possible that he is also trying to break the injustice by avenging the moons as well. I don't know, that's just wild speculation for now. However, there's one thing that I can assure you. Many people miss this, but Featherfall will play a role in Varka's story quest. Don't worry, it's also confirmed in the version trailer's description. From what the trailer said, he found it quite ironic for the Knight of Boreas to step in, likely supporting my theory that there are two Boreas in this case. Of course, I don't think we'll see Featherfall in flesh, but it could be something like the crystal we saw during Caribe's Archon quest. He's also the one who mentioned the Traveler, or Varka, I don't know, either way, he is the one who refers to either of those two as the Outlander who caught the wind, referring to Mondstadt's prologue. As always, hype! Now that we reached this point, it's no surprise that Varka's story quest is only the beginning of Mondstadt's new chapter. The Song of Welkin Moon is not yet over, and it's no different with the entire story of the moon goddesses. It doesn't seem that Mondstadt's expansion will only about Dornman port specifically, but it could also refer to one of the ancient unified civilizations called Arcadia. Fun fact, Arcadia was already mentioned all the way from 1.0, a place mentioned by Kaya, and we all thought that this place is just a made-up land. It doesn't help either that the place never gets another mention until Luna 4. I can hear Roosevelt screaming in joy right now. Turns out, it's a real place, and the Gunhilder clan, basically Jin's clan, came from this place as well. Just like Hyperborea and Langan, people of Arcadia worship the three moon goddesses, and it was only mentioned to us during this update in the Obate of Morning Stars and Moon and a day carved in Rising Winds artifact sets. I also would like to propose that the Wild Hunt will appear in Dornman port, hence why the second in command of Varka's expedition and Jin's mother, Frederica, was sent there by Varka. Now I made a video talking about this in my non-Cryo Exordia talking about the Knights of Livonias, and man, I am pleasantly satisfied with how well it aged considering the Wild Hunt are coming to Mondstadt anyway. Since the Wild Hunt are always related to the moons in one way or another, coming to Mondstadt might not only just for Boreas, but could very likely related to the ancient civilization of Arcadia, potentially solving the Knir, the Dandelion Sea, and maybe, just maybe, the Spiral Abyss and Sirder Voiden. Maybe the people of Arcadia are the ones that created the Spiral Abyss, which is not surprising because I doubt Kyrians created the Spiral Abyss either. We can talk more about this in another day, but for now, thank you so much for your ongoing support, and I'll see you in my next video. Jana!